Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Weinkoop, and welcome to another edition of Spug TV. Today we have Laura Rose in the program talking about a boss that is just kind of nasty and harsh. So some very interesting things today. Welcome back to the show, Laura. Great to have you back.
Thanks, Steve. It's always a pleasure.
So what do you do when you have a boss that just kind of, everybody's seen those bosses or maybe even had those bosses where they sort of flop off the deep end every time something happens, and the response is just an all sort of disproportionate amount to what's going on for real.
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. If I am in the employee position, I would probably take it offline, take it off to a one-on-one meeting with the manager and ask him, if it's a very tight schedule or you really need to be direct with the employees, that's okay. But if it's a constant way of the way he reacts or responds to everyday items, I would probably take him offline and have a one-on-one conversation with them and just be open with how the best way to get the best performance out of you.
Interesting. I know I've had a couple of times where a boss has been this way, and probably the most successful conversations I had were where I just said, how can I help take some of the stress off? And as soon as you say that, they're like, well, I'm not stressed. Well, you've got so much on your plate. How can I help with some of that stuff so that you're not feeling all that weight? And it makes them kind of take a step back and maybe reevaluate what they're giving off in terms of that level of frustration. And I guess that's probably the most successful I've seen, is just trying to make them kind of rethink about how they're presenting themselves and how you can help them versus, you know what, you shouldn't talk like that.
Yeah, I like that answer much better. The other way is also if they're coming at you saying you're not getting the right performance out of them. I mean, you're not performing correctly.
Right.
Then you express how you can best perform better.
Right.
And what an environment you excel at.
Right. I think maybe too that there's that old saying, and I need to find out where this comes from, but it's the seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you can try to find out what's really got them so keyed up, maybe you can help them alleviate that.
And that's actually Stephen Covey's Habit 5. There's this book by Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and that's actually habit number 5, to seek to understand first and then to be understood.
Yeah, I think that can help a lot. If you've got a manager that's kind of consistently like that, what do you do in that kind of thing? I mean, dealing with a single situation is easier than dealing with somebody that's their response. How do you deal with somebody that's their response?
And after you've tried to understand where they're coming from, I would also make use of the resources that you have. You have an HR department, and you don't have to be the one that knows the answer.
I see.
And go to the HR and say, and just express some of the things that you're going through, and that approach it like you're trying to get clarity, that you're confused about something and you're just trying to understand something, versus accusing your boss of doing something wrong.
Right. That's a good idea. Good stuff. And I think if you're the person that's doing that and that's your initial response, do you have some steps to, you always hear about the stress thing of count to 10 to yourself or whatever. What do you recommend? How do you kind of start to change yourself to be better at responding to those?
Well, I always recommend pausing. Take a pause. And like you said, taking a deep breath, or counting to 10. And also, I ask yourself, don't ask, hey, is this harshness, am I being harsh, or is this appropriate? Just always focus on the appropriate action. Don't try to figure out, is what I'm doing wrong or right? Say, what is the appropriate way to respond to this? Remember, we can't really change anybody else, but we can 100% control our reaction to something.
Absolutely true. And I think too, if you can start to just kind of judge your own responses and reactions to things, you'll tune it over time. You'll get better at it over time. You're not going to get it the very first time. You're not going to have to, all the solutions, but over time you will.
And you're not going to really recognize what you're doing when you're doing it.
Yeah.
So the thing to do is, at the end of the day or at the end of the workday, try
always, good advice and some definite personal development targets there too. Good to have you on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you, Laura.